We begin this flip through of Frostgrave 2nd edition with a disclaimer. We're not going to tell you much about Frostgrave. We're going to focus on the changes between this edition and the 2015 1st edition. If Frostgrave is new to you, check out our article in the July 2015 issue of Wargames Illustrated magazine, which will give you a good idea of what fantasy wargames in the Frozen City is all about. Now, on with and into the 2nd edition. Our first port of call is the Wizard Creation section, which begins on page 17. While you browse this section and take in how little has changed, I will point out the finer details that have. Like wizards are no longer paying for their starting items. In an effort to clamp down on players arming their wizards with 2 weapons, there is no longer a +1 fight bonus for being ambidextrous. 2-handed weapons also now take up 2 item slots, whilst a dagger becomes a free initial item. That's it for wizards. Other than those tweaks, everything is as was in 1st edition. Rolling back to page 27, we can see that apprentices have been made slightly better. Their stats have been improved, taking their shoot score to 0, the same as a wizard, and their health has jumped by +2 to 10. They're also cheaper to recruit at 100 gold coins. Moving on to soldiers, we find the biggest area of change in the new rules, beginning with the fact that soldiers are now split into 2 groups, these being standard and specialist soldiers. Incidentally, as they are in Frostgrave's sister game, Ghost Archipelago. The main reason for this is to restrict the type of soldiers players can recruit and avoid, for example, archer heavy warbands. Players are restricted to a maximum of 4 specialists. There has also been some tinkering with soldiers' stats, and prices for recruitment have also been reviewed and changed. Moving into the core rules and setting up the table, there is now less treasure to be had. Following the central treasure token being placed, each player then gets to put down 2 more pieces. Having an odd number of tokens to hunt, 5 rather than 6, should help promote player interaction, with a clearer winner at the end of the game. In an effort to help wounded soldiers plough through rough ground, a new rule, Run For It, has been introduced, which allows models to forego all action and move 3 inches instead. Combat and shooting has undergone very little change, other than a new maximum bonus of +10 and +5 rather than double damage for critical hits. This is clearly an effort to limit overpowering. There are some subtle but fundamental changes when it comes to casting spells. There is now a casting roll minimum score of 14. Any successful roll below that score is rounded up. This should eliminate the issue of a high level spellcaster using a spell he or she knows really well, but the casting number being so weak that is easily resisted. There is also a limit on how high a spellcaster can empower a spell, 18. This number can only be passed by 19 or 20 on an actual dice roll. Moving on to the spells themselves, these have been re-evaluated. That doesn't mean that they have all changed, but the author has looked at every spell to see where improvements can be made, resulting in tweaks to both stats and effects. 2 new spells have also been introduced which affect treasure whilst it is being carried, Fool's Gold and Suggestion. Both of these spells should see more scrapping over treasure, which is where Frostgrave is at its most fun. There are other new spells besides, including Animate Skull, Bridge and Destroy Undead. Spells have been a problem area for players in the past, with complaints over some being overpowered and others being next to useless. Hopefully the obvious efforts the author has put into reworking these have paid off. At the heart of Frostgrave is its campaign system. There is always a question mark over how many people actually play campaign games and how many are happy just to play one-offs, but with Frostgrave it's fair to say that campaigning is a big appeal of the system, and also that many campaign players were looking for improvements in the system. The injury and death table for wizards and apprentices sees them dying less often. The experience table has been taken from the Maze of Malkor supplement and inserted into the main rules. There are a few more limitations on how a wizard can spend his or her levels, designed to encourage them to learn more spells and slow down their progress. The other changes in this section is to the buying and selling of stuff. Both the purchase and sale price has been introduced in the appropriate table. In general, wizards can't get as much money for selling items as in first edition, encouraging them to use what they have more. Moving into the scenarios section of the book, Frostgrave 1 players may be surprised and disappointed even to see that the scenarios are the same as those in the first edition. But hang on, hold that emotion, because it's true that those 10 classic scenarios are there, but there are also 10 new ones to challenge Frostgrave 2 players and, characteristically with Joe McCulloch, challenge their terrain making skills. The book's final chapter is the bestiary, where you will find descriptions and stats of all creatures that inhabit the frozen city and environs. Not much has changed here, some stat tweaks, watch out for the tougher vampires, and random encounters are now a little more likely to happen, although having less treasure to trigger this may even those chances out. The last 20 pages of the book are dedicated to the appendix, spell cards and reference sheets. In the appendix, the author confronts the issue of changes which need to be made to previously published Frostgrave supplements so they can be used with the second edition. In truth, it's not much, the main thing being the categorisation of new soldiers which have been introduced in the supplements into standard and specialist. I hope this flip through of Frostgrave 2nd edition has given you a brief guide to what to expect rules changes wise in the new book. Essentially, there's nothing radical in there, with the focus being on tweaks to rebalance gameplay. Only several test games followed by a spot of campaigning will be the proof of that pudding. We would love to know what you think of Frostgrave 2nd edition, either on the basis of this flip through or having played it, so please comment below. This video has been brought to you by WI Prime, Wargames Illustrated Magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WI Prime by following these links.